Are you good, Parker? Yep. Okay, cool. Part 1 is the framework. I value just state action, finance government policy guarantees right to people with equal status, people are equal burdens, excluding certain individuals arbitrarily, denies their due, winter and laden. Our cognitive prosecuted in just not groups, just not workers, trainers, exceptional lines, out of moral service, those side of moral excluded. We failed acknowledging justice suffers structural inevitable operations and build systematic ways mitigate its effects. And justice requires rectifying action or misanalyze the material circumstances that cause violence for us pathos. And empirical misanalyze given the just for looking just like how people said theoretical injustices, abstracting the conduct improved evidence price current to the concrete problem. The standard is promoting social equality. Promoting social equality means increased ability to say in the conditions that govern them. Part 2 is kept on the inside campus. Free speech is under attack in the era from demagogues and inciting dissent. Make students sit down and shut up. Students don't even question the practices. Omari. What motivates called manipulated ideological self-movement and help leaders to police student behaviors? Intervening students need to leave Delaware had an ideology freshmen. If Hammer students came in no administrator doing really change things, students in its mission, or word about their grades to fight back. And in fact, any speech fiction is a spillover effect which silence dissent. Strawson 1. In escape rules, any speech regulation, chills, different classes, decided questioning towards consequences, satisfact rules, constant precedent, to restrict other speech, any speech falsified a fraction of speech, and is undermining the First Amendment's moral legitimacy. Worse, the speech codes or swing ways targets those saying to help ensure extra speech codes are only enforced against minorities. The ACLU won. Codes have proven counterproductive powers that didn't turn out because of hate speech, immigrant racially attacked, persecuted actors of color, ally reformation, racism and punish Michigan, white students in 20 cases charge black students with offensive speech, and the for me but not really rich backfires mobilizing the alt-right. They're rampant in the status quo. Carl. The alt-right natives, white nationalists, masculinists, leaders of Upper University campus, division united to warring racist clash, cults, free speech, all renegade a foothold in our culture. One is to punish racism because of meaningless concepts. In 23, only 16 of the faculty of these in campuses, witch hunts against academics, rampant in college campus, feminist, progressive, and fear of classmates, causing professional disaster. Thus, the advocacy. Public colleges and universities in the United States ought not restrict any constructed free speech. Kurtz. College universal intellectual freedom program obligation universities. This Jackson titles press speech upon offensive news, free expression, would have placed against speech codes. Part 3 is let the words fall out, deregulating campus speech and correct protesters, and sets valuable legal precedents. The ACLU too. Laws and free state contemplating Justin Perlman, Chicago isn't a bigot. Became a civil rights in the 1960s, defending first base for you, defending for you and me as well. And only open dialogue ensures students demand liberation for themselves, creating radical democracy in colleges. DebateDrills. Schools in the middle and critical themselves find their right to choose their path, a dialogue with your education, reducing question, reduce political quality, merging citizen, decenter classroom, students engaging direct questioning, encourage students to speak their minds and experiment with their thoughts. Meanwhile, speech goes to mobilize action by driving press thought underground. Strawson 2. Any speech regulation effect on blatant racism, more virulent forms going past surviving said Senator will drive race underground, which will respond to British Parliament's prediction, cost effects race speech in terms of mobilizing opposition, race illustrated by campus incidents, expressed chill by universe sanctions. It is doubtful there would have been widespread discussion in campuses, and free speech educated students learning themselves to reject oppressive views. Leonard. Professor William Shockley theories blacks, hills, and whites were released plan for genocide, David Shockley genesis, made Shockley an amateur and said winning battle with race, confronting the truth. Shock's arguments not specific on the ground of scientific error rather than racist affect. Students have had opportunity to clash of ideas and underneath why veterans think their own beliefs, even wrong ideas, have beneficial effect. And campus free speech is key to liberation activism. It's the only way to change minds. Puzder. No better place to make the campus quad student acts like understand the motivates increase diversity and equality for every civil rights struggles. Different values and must have rights to free speech. Students lost touch with free speech views. Obstacle Missouri. Oppressor more one most student voice from a public event. You don't change laws, stop speaking theirs. Only for generous respect, open thoughts. Otherwise, campus being capacity conformity rather than discuss much have always still freedom to do so. And speech codes are ineffective at solving hate speech. 5 reasons. Ace of point psychological evidence and Britain regulations are empirically ineffective cause backlash. Strawson 3. There is no precise law to end change attitudes. More appealing to persuade for censorship, known as empirical evidence it's effective, Britain defamations, a quarter century of notice from fact to neo-Nazi groups, even vicious epithets go unpunished. These to the point they glorify press speakers, which causes martyrdom. Strawson 4. Censorship and attack glorified race speakers, ever expressed adults and race speakers about police other achieved, winning against the government, race speakers, martyrs, heroes, suppressing speech increases public interest. Cease the point they drive oppressed underground and to mobilize action. Strawson 5. Any speech regulation now suggests to settle and say go survive. The most good achieve would be to drive race underground. British experience confirms prediction. Affect race speech for mobilizing opposition. Illustrated by discussion. Hate speech. Catalyze communal efforts to destroy bigotry. D-point regulation and hate speech are empirically ineffective. I read this part above actually, so skip that D point. D point, even if regulations work, they can't be enforced. They run into intractable ambiguities. Strassing 5. Difficulty formulating clear definitions of hate speech, non-accomplice valuable information, underscored by track ambiguities in campus rules. Even if pronouns are unsure as to applicable situations, we are seeing power to decide which words to protect. Free expression exists for those in power and underview. Accepting this. One app gets RBI's 8-point time scheme. They negative for the app of the NC multiple different layers. And RBI's can be checked back by trying to collapse the issues. B's the point is app flags negative collapse. You label the 2 RC app also needs the RBI to combat. The 2 collapse to be able to go for the 2 all in theory. If they can collapse as well, C point is reciprocity. The neg can reach where the app can't. So RBI's key to solve a reciprocity by ensuring equal path to ballot. Second, app gets 1 error theory key to check back negative use. Otherwise, they can do anything possibly abusive and have no recourse whatsoever. For example, they read 30 nibs, nothing checks it back. And 1 error theory is dropped the debater key to solve for structural skews. I can't cover theory and substantive format along 1AR, so having the ability to collapse the 2 errors key to solve for that time skew. The RBI and drop the debater stuff was accepted.
That's fine. Ready for CX?
Yep.
Let's not go on the mobilizing the alt-right warrant. That's the Carly evidence. What's the warrant in the card?
Sure, this flags several warrants. So A, it establishes a uniqueness claim that the alt-right is mobilized in the status quo, which means the app gets try or die because the status quo already has high amounts of the alt-right. But the argument is that the alt-right rises up because of censorship. When the left is seen as being too PC, then the alt-right is able to galvanize behind the left being seen as intolerant.
Which the alt-right arose from people being frustrated of jobs and rural people voting for them. Why is campus?
Well, no, I would argue differently. In academia, the alt-right rose because people thought the liberals were not very tolerant. And
alt-right rising in academia uniquely bad?
Sure. Well, the argument this card is pretty long. It establishes why the alt-right has caused witch hunts against academics, and people don't hold views on campuses that minority professors and people who are gay, minority professors, etc.
Right,
hold views on campuses.
Let's move on. Let's go into the free speech key to rejecting views / open dialogue. So the warrant is just counter speech, right? It's just
not necessarily. It's often that it's counter speech, but the argument is
what's the impact?
Sure. The Leonard evidence is empirical, that when William Shockley spoke on campus, people were able to see for themselves how bad his views were. So in part, it changes minds. Students who are ignorant may see these views as being racist and reject them. So it's partially counter-speech, but also just that exposure.
On campus, people are racist all the time, in other spectrums of the world. Donald Trump is racist on TV. Why do they need a speaker to come be racist for them to learn racism is bad?
Well, sure, the argument was that in an academic discussion, another scientist made Shockley look stupid for his racist views. So discussing ideas openly was able to portray him as foolish. So people saw racist views being dismantled in front of them. It convinced them to change their minds. You don't see Trump, for example, debating against someone like Chuck Schumer on TV very often, whereas you would see William Shockley having his views taken down by prominent liberals who dismiss his racist views and debate them openly.
Need to say something racist for some people that talk about racism?
Well, sure, it's not about having a discussion about it per se, but rather some type of debate. So if we just shut down oppressive speakers, often happens in colleges where speakers aren't recognized or allowed to show up, then the discussion is not the same and people don't ever tackle the views themselves.
That's fine. Let's go on to let's go into the reverse enforcement evidence.
Sure.
So at the ACLU, so this says that minorities were persecuted. Can't minorities say bigoted things as well that shouldn't be allowed? Why is this a bad thing?
Sure. The examples of reverse enforcement, people saying white trash, but not in a very aggressive, not in a way that deserves persecution. So in this case, it was a black student standing up to a white class roommate who was bullying him, saying white trash, and it was only enforced against minorities, not white students, which means that if it's only charged against minority, that's obviously disproportionate. It shouldn't be allowed.
That's fine. Circ rep.
Parker? Hey, Parker, you good?
Oh, is Raffi back?
Yeah.
Yeah, my paper is just next to me. I grabbed it quickly.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm here. Sorry about that. My bad.
Cool. 3F case. Everyone ready?
Yep.
Cool.
First off, politics. Trump is putting protections in tariffs right now, but it won't pass. Republicans are blocking standard December 5th rights. Republicans have signaled that they would not support Trump's to impose tax on companies to move overseas. I want to trade article of California majority leader told reporters Paul Ryan to also push back the response for Republicans. If Democrats are also believe that will work with the Trump on many economic issues. Trump can attack trade deals. Position Republicans push into recent decades prepared with the tariff threats to China. They tariffs appear too much of a majority leader supportive fast track authority. Proponents of reducing tariff. The link after campaign, Trump campaigned against political correctness and retaliated against Berkeley protests, which means that even if the University of the Act, he potentially gets credit for implementing the act. He can be the most liberal institutions, Bay Brown and Mega 17 years back in October. Trump vowed to end political correctness and called campuses to cut federal funding to Berkeley. Trump is also making his issue because it serves as a message of the campus officials that whoever pursued any of the presidents, you can't ignore the president is tweet about. It might be difficult to pick by someone who has millions of followers. Sees the internal link to warrants versus a winner's win. Presidential boldness creates a steamroll effect. Green 10 writes there's relationship boldness and achievement. Integrity presidents like Reagan and Bush knew that will effectively leave the hangers on one-on-one wages to preserve techniques by illusion of power, part of being part of the winning team. And second, the applicants Trump poll cap the plan to get wins over the Ways and Means Committee sees bipartisan as a top priority. Jenga 16 writes, chairman of the Ways and Means Committee also subcommittee expressed concern that colleges are stifling speech. When colleges suppress speech, we have to have an education and censorship. It's a bipartisan problem. The students are being stifled with liberal especially and D is the impact news scarves 2 millions most extreme poverty day. Also still fact we're multiplying the impact version 16 free speech is free trade is one of the most important tools for fighting extreme poverty empowers millions in every scenario global side for protectionism. China and other countries take use and pose to challenge for terrorists for doing millions of a lifetime of crushing poverty. The global decline in extreme poverty is insufferable. The global trading regime with 4 countries can save sell cheap goods to rich countries that could growth skyrockets more jobs. Look at 50 years of trade data growth increasing by 1.5 points after trade. China is the most dramatic effect trade with the United States. Key part of the story of the uplift. He tried to trade with China with regard to serious crimp in Chinese economic growth, making it hard for 54 million people living in extreme poverty to escape and throw even more into poverty. The people to over 900 million people still living in extreme poverty. So obviously, I would say app on scope and sales and sex. Millions of people who are literally going to die and put in extreme poverty while the after make sure that people get better, hear things differently. Now, next off is hate speech. Just winning increased amount of hate speech. Everyone is that the plan legitimize and legalize hate speech, which means that people will take advantage of lack of regulation, will say racist things because there's no fear of recourse and it's socially accessible. People want to say your someone have response to hate speech increases the only way that kind of speech works if we know the racists are, so they say things out loud, that which means that one, either a hate speech doesn't increase and your solemnity is denied it, and you vote negative on presumption because you justify you need to justify with shift from the status quo. People want your solemnity you increase hate speech, and this called psychological violence, internalized hatred. Even if speech codes don't decrease hate speech codes, stop the impression that hate speech will go unpunished. God owns 709 rates hate speech victims suffer psychological harm, including depression, impairment of form. Some respond by internalizing pathologies, maybe transcendence, generating less percentage not blended directly. Every insult genocide came on the heels of rape, hate speech, bleeding the victim to political terms. What happens to the hate speech being exported before staying the regime to European Canada promotes hate speech exhibit on some posit that influence for regime force impulses in Czech maybe more dangerous hate speech, but studies discount this whether the big is more dangerous. The incident resin of giving more onlookers the impression that the beta minority is so successful. Next off is just the weighing debate. There are a couple internal, there are 3 internal links to the hate speech so solving, which is the one year we'll go for. Ours that there's no law against hate speech, but people will because people don't have to use it to feel recourse anymore. Their arguments are A point that the law will drive underground, B point the kind of speech is key to resolve in the long term, and then C point is that their protests or liberation arguments that they to make sure that they can resolve in their first place. Now here's the weighing, here's the overdue argument. Hate speech, they are hate speech internally outweighs in general. A point is verified, but they are possible 100% hate speech while all their impacts are speculative, i.e. in a couple of years as fully something will happen to our hate speech links outweighs because it has hate speech right now. You should now respecting psychological harm for the possible long-term benefits that have intervening actors also that may solve to increase in the first. Just skip the next argument now. The internal link also always driving underground. A point is that actually there's no reasons for hate speech called psychological trauma because people can hear it if it's underground. That causes psychological trauma will not occur. B point is scope driving underground doesn't affect a lot of people who know where underground actually is, while allowing the university affects all students who would be there. C point is alternate solvency. College students can find out who the racists are through so many different methods like tracking voter patterns, learning about in class, having support groups, but there's only ways to stop cycle violence against minorities, i.e. banning hate speech, which our link is now. Also, our internal link outweighs their counter speech forms. A point is it's a controlled internal link. Minorities with silence because they fear psychological violence or retaliation. White supremacists group protesting on the college campus, so forth, let students out. Understand the motivation for students to convince others not to be racist. People in time frame kind of speech has a chance of resolving racism in the future for hate speech towards minorities immediately causes students to hear hateful and psychological damning things right now and calls them cause internalized inferiority. Don't stick to absolute because it's too late for them to do anything fail on them because minorities already view themselves worthless. C point crossed by the alternative just made above now. Our alternative link outweighs their liberation strategies and demanding itself. A point is it's not tried. Thousands of protests are demanding it in the status quo already exist. They existed and recognize or impact people. B point is reversibility. It's very easy to reform speech codes to allow people to learn about it in other ways. I can learn about it in classrooms where they can just have someone to speak an example and allow to make sure they're allowed to say that at first. So there's only one, but there's no possible way to resolve people saying hate speech other than literally banning it. Now, also our internal link outweighs their legal precedent argument. A point time frame takes years for the courts to pass precedent to see the benefits or level of violence is happening in the status quo, which means you should not risk
rejecting it for the off chance people it's not tried after legal precedent. There are other ways to set legal precedent via court cases. Are there actually there's no way to resolve psychological rights for the other arguments now? The impact weighing debate, the impact weighing debate by the hate speech argument now weighs a reversal for enforcement argument. 8 points probably there's tons of checks and reversal for public outcry against racist institutions, but universities have incentive to not appear racist to increase funding in nations, but there's no checking against hate speech because absolute sense is allowed on campuses. People in scale being called a racial epithet is much more harmful than having speech centered our evidence against hate speech causes mental psychological violence that causes internalized hatred and racism. This is not for one person able to use race language to respond to hate speech, which takes us to argument. Now they say, now also always a legal precedent argument that equal time frame takes a year to cross by the argument viewpoint is that probability to legal precedent is affected by tons of other policies, but there's a very minuscule chance that will change this argument. Point is skip the next part now. The hate speech impact also always a liberation strategy argument. 8 points probably show actually skip those arguments. Just going on case now. I will answer the arguments of the line, but starting the arguments in the underview by hate speech is ineffective. They say Britain regulation caused backlash, but there's no impact in the argument. It's not about changing people's mind, but make sure that minorities don't hear it in the future. They say martyrdom, but that's empirically not true. The first is a sunspot alternate causalities for glorification of white supremacy. The person literally retweets white supremacy. White supremacists will glorify other white supremacists no matter what. That means glorification is inevitable. Second is obviously absurd. Justifying not putting KKK members in trouble. They commit hate crime instances, but now listeners as martyrs. That's obviously absurd. Now their next argument is about they drive underground, which I've already warned why that would be a good thing because it wouldn't be able to hear in the first place. State restrictions don't work, but obviously you just need some sort of overarching system to define what hate speech is. So you could also have any sort of board or review case on individual basis to make sure that it doesn't have any sort of failing implication. Now the reverse enforcement argument is empirically not developed in U94 rights. I would argue that hate speech rules is hurt minorities. Like empirical evidence is ridiculous. FBI reports that the hate crimes are committed by more frequently white against blacks. The reverse distribution enforcement seems consistent with the commission of offense minority groups. So prosecutions needs to record the card there. This outweighs it when in context our evidence is the conscious United States, which is much more applicable to the resolution than post-World War United Kingdom or just a couple examples like Michigan. Viewpoint says scope. Our evidence is literally FBI analysis of it, and it actually relies on things like statistical studies which check back their arguments. Now their counter speech arguments. There's for huge alternate assault discussion on off-campus psychology campus and town square should be able to resolve the impact as well. Also, even other discussions that happen post-college can still solve as well. Second, counter speech is still loud in the world of the status quo. We just tell us to know who the racists are, even if they're not allowed to say the N-word.
Okay. Do you mind sending a marked speech doc, or just with the analytics that you skipped?
Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks. The Steinhauer evidence says they don't support it because they don't want a trade war. Why wouldn't the fear of a trade war thump the app's minuscule link in terms of colleges?
Right, because it's pretty close right now. That's what our argument is. There's a lot of Republicans who think this is a good idea. That's why Trump campaigned on this issue. And
no, but if they're fearing a trade war, why wouldn't that be enough to overwhelm the fact that they like free speech or whatever?
Because there's a lot of people that's the extreme end. Paul Ryan. But there's always a lot of people in the middle. Democrats are pretty in the middle on this. There's a lot of Republicans who are.
Well, okay, that's fine. This is from December. This is from December, which was obviously before Trump's comments on Berkeley. Why is this still relevant? / why has this? If it's failed, where do you show it's going to be brought up for another vote? If it was in December,
it's not a vote. It's it's a huge idea that Trump has had. Right? He literally campaigned on this issue. He's not going to be oh, well, I guess it didn't happen in 60 days. I give up on trade.
Where does your evidence say that it's still being discussed? I know you logically think it is still being discussed, but where do you show descriptively that it still is?
That's not in the evidence. If you make that claim, I'll read new evidence in the 2 hour. It's clearly false, right?
The winners win arguments. These are about Reagan and Bush. Why does Obama was often battled despite having radical proposals like Obamacare? Why does winners win still apply to more recent presidents?
Because obviously I would say Obama did gain some benefits from passing Obamacare. But also the difference is
he barely passed anything in his second term.
Let me finish, Raffi.
Sure.
The big difference here is the app is seen as a win by both sides, right? So people backlash to Obama because they were "Oh, I hate you, I'm a Republican," but that doesn't apply to this policy because it's a bipartisan win.
Okay, that's fine. The app only affects public colleges, which is obviously not very many colleges compared to all the private schools. Where do you show this drop in the bucket change is enough to tilt it towards completely allowing the free stuff?
In the bucket, it's a huge amount of colleges all making a massive policy shift from where they're going in the status quo. They're also public, which makes it even seem more like Trump is the one who's being involved with it. So that if anything, just supercharged.
That's fine. The hate speech dissad. Name a single speech code that successfully combated hate speech.
That's not our argument, right? Our argument is that by definition, they don't resolve it. By definition, hate speech means
speech code's been around for like decades. You can't name a single one that actually worked.
I don't have I didn't look up each college and how.
Because it seems like your 8 point is
Got to stack 9 indicates that it does have a solve. It does solve, and then are also
sure,
the argument in which
line in that
it does. Say that again. You went out a little bit.
This says Europe and Canada, but on case you say context matters, we should look to U.S. laws. So why do Europe and Canada matter if your own case analysis says it's specificity matters?
That's just more warrants, but I also give warrants above about why this would logically apply. Like, by definition, banning hate speech means people don't have to listen to hate speech.
Sure, that's fine. I'll start prep. We're doing 4 minutes, right?
5.
Oh, 5? Okay, sure. That's fine.
Cool.
Okay. Is everyone good?
Yep.
The framing issues the entire 1AC to link turn to the hate speech dissad, and they only read impacts and very few reasons why they actually solve. So extend part 2 with ACLU versus enforcement empirically occurs. Michigan proves speech codes enforced against minorities instead 20 different cases, which takes out the internal link on hate speech. They're only enforced against black people, not white people instead, which in the never solve hate speech, not a line by line. Their 8 point dug out when Yoon was that about context, but it's not about colleges directly. I discussed Michigan, where to say no sample speech was working, cross-links was devastating. Their B point was scope, but it's not applicable though. Hate crimes are the same thing as speech crimes because all they're enforced by different agents like the FBI versus colleges. So my evidence slaves theirs. Venice and Carl, which is completely dropped. The alt-right is here to stay and has normalized violence in the status quo. They're spread because of restriction on hate speech, which has 2 implications. First is try or die for the hate sign status quo. They have no uniqueness for dissent, means they get no offense because they're currently normalizing violence. Second, it outweighs politics on time frame. The tariffs will take a long time to be effective and are never going to immediately solve the harms for a sideshow every single day. They increase white nationalism. Now, the solvency extend puzzler at the very bottom. The athletes of protest against oppression empirically shown free speech. Whiskey to campus activists and civil rights proves, which solves the terminal impact of both disads. We can protest against oppression right now. For example, hate speech will be solved by discussing it openly and getting better dialogue. Now the underview, they misanswered the 8 point with Frost and extend they cause backlash. Psychology shows they won't ever solve hate speech. They say no impact, but it shows their codes will never solve because people will have a forbidden fruit syndrome where it doesn't actually solve for oppression. They just cause backlash. Now the hate speech dissad. First, no link group targeting is not protected constitutionally. Justice 10, be harmless court held constitutional libel statutes, rendered action portray lack of virtue citizenship, and racial legislation, discrimination, meaning messages. Second, turn speech codes take resources away from better methods of combating hate. Straws and 6, then the hate speech ban on equality calls for workers to be about expressions, every cause prejudices, and symptom. Many universities opt hate speech codes. It's unpolicy constitutionally, combat biases, former advocates for campus hate speech petitioned. They can found and put efforts towards recruit retention. 3, turn they cause greater hate. Britain proves that censorship makes violence worse. Malik, I've been a speech principally because of content. I was content-based fans, matter principle, and practical impact. Right free speech only has right force to then rights people who found this free practice sentiments fester. Hate racialization that claims to fraud Britain proclaim excitement. Politics was race in Britain history is a decade of race slugs. Secret agents to beat up. Fourth term they distract from the root cause of hate. Heron, speech attack of root languages. They cannot offer long-term relief to victims and many people mechanisms for masking problems. Speech goes serve further results of abuse of speech. They fail to acknowledge the root causes. Mark at root causes. Their BSA point of the link was that solvency wasn't counter speech. I never read counter speech in the 1AC. I said it's that open discussion rather than talking back, which takes at their internal links. Now, the Wang debate page, their first argument was their link outweighs mine, but they haven't named a single speech code that's actually effective recitation. Michigan's, Wisconsin's weren't. Air heavily after because I give actual examples about countries across the entire world which infield speech codes. They say that the fourth Wang argument that outweighs liberation and the protest stuff coming out of the AC, but I've won that free speech is legally key to solve right now because people need to speak out of campuses, so I do control uniqueness. I've won the free speech overall key. Now, they say this outweighs first enforcement. 1, I outweigh probability of no example speech codes working, whereas I show 100% of the time speech codes were fails, so it's a question size length versus size of the impact, which is overall key to solve. Second, outweigh magnitude. This causes massive embarrassment. Students will have active control because they would just stay home if their hate speech. Now, the dissad. Okay. First, there's a thumper in their own evidence that says trade wars also destroy the possibility of passing the bill. No reason on the app would overrun trade wars, which takes out their argument anyway. Second, to link the Athens colleges, not USG policy option. No reason why it's not a Trump because only offends certain public colleges, which is not many colleges anyway. They're missing any spillover to claim 3 turn winners when it's empirically denied. Obama was opposed every single step of the way, which is proof their argument because it proves that. There's massive backlash, fourth foreign policy to stumps for Trump. Other issues affected. Robertson 17, which are ignoring real brain foreign policy challenges for stacking up and said Pence pronounced Nova. Yeah, Trump punched Russia, Putin, and so on. Chain reaction decision in Ukraine. Trump saying NATO should help Russia to combat posture Putin is in. No, moved away characterization of countries' problems like global backlash Trump. Little time to have confusion. They say dissident ways the app on scope, but it's a question of size of link. He has to link several internal links for his slideshow. The app's effective. Heron was marked at the root causes, and I did not read Falkrange or Shelton.
Can you send out another doc with that?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Cool. Everyone ready?
Yeah.
Here's the story. The diss at the Steinberg evidence says that Trump is putting protectionists right now and trying to cut off our trade barriers, but that's not going to be, but he's not able to pass it because most Republicans think that's not a great idea, but they're split right now, which means it's a very close vote, but the app gives Donald Trump a huge amount of political capital. The Brown and Mango 17 evidence, the Janko 16 evidence means that the win is attributed to Donald Trump because he pressured colleges like Berkeley to rally against political correctness and say they should allow free speech in the future, and he campaigned on the issue, which means that he gets perceptual advantage of looking good. That means that this gives him a lot of political capital because winners win, and because it makes Trump look good, because people think that's a good idea to have free speech on campuses, which triggers the impact of protectionism, which causes millions of people to die in poverty. That's 16 evidence, which causes 900 million people to die from extreme poverty. That is a drop impact argument. They can see the weighing underneath it that I was on size of scope and scale since it affects 900 million. They say it's a question of size only, but even if you think the size the risk of a link of dissat is 0.001%, of 0.001% times 9 billion is still like 900,000 people dying in the streets, which obviously the app does not even come close to solving, since it's just a couple million of people not being faced by death, but rather just being able to combat racism and mindsets a little bit better. But obviously, you have to ask yourself, what is worse, a racist mindset or millions of people dead in the streets? And obviously, they just had to waste so much on scope that probability and risk of a link is not as relevant. Now, the line by line of their answers group their thumper arguments, which are the trade war arguments, and they're purely just and there's foreign policy thumbs arguments. First, this is my point. Yes, Donald Trump has low political capital right now, but the app gives him high political capital, which is the argument. Second is that the app is viewed as a huge win for him because it's something that's viewed as a bipartisan, and it's against the most liberal institutions on the planet, i.e. college campuses, which are notorious for producing a lot of liberals and things like Marxists, which means that he's seen as a huge strongman, which is what he campaigned on the Christians, which means that the amount of political capital he gets is enough to overwhelm both these arguments. Three, the risk of a link is sufficient here. I've already made the argument. Now I say college is not the USFG, but first is that it's a question of perception. That's the argument I did on this extension of it, is that this argument is not relevant. I have carded evidence that this is the case in political capital. Well, he just said analytics saying that it's not relevant, but it's accurate, but my evidence says it does. Second side, it's supercharged because public colleges, which means it's controlled by the United States government, which means that it still looks like it's still pegged to the argument. Now, the state's empirical now with Obama. First, it's empirical claim that empirical warrant. You don't know if Obama didn't pass a lot of policies. That's the key to verifiability, because otherwise, we could just put out competing empirical claims to be also resolved. Second is that cross-examination argument, crosswise here, that was not adequately responded to here, which is my argument is that it's a question of bipartisanship, which on Obama, like things like Obamacare, obviously were not, which means it doesn't give him the amount of political capital that the dissat does. Now the case. Now they're weighing arguments. They go for the case. They say I was on time frame. First of all, obviously time frame is not relevant in scope and scale. For example, something is happening right now, like a fly biting you. That's not relevant as millions of people dying in poverty, which means that's which means scope and scale are on a meta framing level. Second is that obviously trade is immediate as well. As soon as Donald Trump passes this policy, then tariffs go away and people instantly lose their jobs, which means that lose their jobs because they're not able to sustain it anymore because people are not buying, which means there's instantaneous impact, which doesn't matter. Three, definitely outweighs on probability. There's outweighs on probability. There's so many other things that factor into the ultra right, until the alt right, like things like other voting patterns and et cetera, but there's only one thing that can stop trade policies, which is trade policies itself, which is the link to the dissat, which means definitely outweighs. Now they go for the straw stand, they go for the reverse enforcement argument, but they extend the jug out on U96 for evidence that reverse enforcement is empirically denied, and it proves that's consistent with most of our colleges. Now the framing issue here is that our evidence is not competitive, which means they go for arguments. Their arguments just that the arguments just like in a couple examples that is enforced against black people. That is not what I do. That's not competitive with the Delgado unit. It says yes, it might be enforced times, but it's still enforced at an overall scale, relatively consistent with both black and white people. For example, the black people who are enforced against are people who are calling each other white, calling white people white trash, or being homophobic, which are the two examples of Michigan case, which means that those are justified instances of the unit evidences about how there's no instance of unjustified evidence, which means that even when the arguments are away because they're more specific, they're not competitive arguments, which means it takes out but it does delink their impact. I mean, if you do about it, they're competitive. You can extend the viewpoint, which is mishandled. It's not an argument by my argument about scope. It's argument on scope because it's relevant. It's an argument that weighs on scope because it's an actual study, which means taking into account the United States and use things like sample size and R values to check back the argument, which is your arguments just cherry-picked examples, which clearly do not cross-apply and do not go outside what will constitute as what is a study for scientific evidence, which means that the size of your link is comparatively tiny and that's not relevant. But if you know about the argument cross-apply the weighing argument, I mean on the weighing page that the size of this link is comparatively small and irrelevant because you're supposed to not be able to say racist things back to each other, which is the scale weighing on the other ones, which is not a key impact and no reason why that's important, which means the size of your impact is irrelevant and does not matter. Now they go for arguments why liberation is uniquely key to solve back the disorder. First, empirically denied. Liberation does not solve the politics scenario. Lots of liberals were campaigning against Donald Trump. I thought he was a fucking terrible person, and they were not able to stop him from being elected. There have been so many protests right now. There's no reason why yours is uniquely key. Second, clearly does not solve. Even if people are angry at Donald Trump, he still does whatever the hell he wants to, which means he also just passed a trade policy. And even if they protest against it, it's too late, and people have already died for our poverty, and it does not matter. It doesn't matter. 3 is empirically. 3 doesn't apply to Trump voters who clearly do not like liberals, do not listen to them, which means the size of your impact is tiny, and the dissent definitely outweighs on probability, which means it doesn't matter now. The dissent, actually the weighing page. They can win all their arguments against the hate speech dissent, but it's not relevant because the question about the weighing debate, they misunderstand my argument. My argument is that in the short term, they screw people over. Yes, I did not aim people are incentivized. Be consistent with the law because otherwise they know it is punished. So yes, while they not change their mindsets, they have to not say anything, otherwise it triggers the impact, which outweighs your offense. They concede the verifiability argument. Says that is definitionally what happens if it's analytical warranted, which means definitely which argument are probability. But even by that, they concede the time frame warrant that the impact evidence, which is rendered in the dissent, is only triggered by short-term impacts. I.e., the people hear hate speech and they internalize the hateful impacts that they go for do not trigger the dissent, and they have already viewed themselves as worthless. You can say even if they win their link terms, the link terms do not access the impact that the dissent goes for.
Okay, that's fine. I'll start. I have 223. I'll take that.
I think I'm ready.
Okay. Parker, you good?
Yeah.
The framing issue, the 2-and-R problem with eggs in one basket. He spent 20 seconds on the hate speech they said the 2-and-R, and is conceding multiple reasons why the case outweighs. I'll win the case today because there are 2 preclusive weighing arguments. The first is the reason why the alt-right's rising, why that outweighs, and the second is the protest stuff go to the alt-right arguments. Extend Carl, the alt-right's here to stay the status quo, normalizing violence, and is causing hate in campuses right now, and we need movements against it. He conceded that it's try or die for the athodonic, the hate speech they said. Trump is here to stay, which makes hate inevitable, which means hate speech debate is over, but he'll extend a second impact that outweighs politics and time frame. His trade wars impact is hypothetical and far off. I will quote his own card for him. It says, the global slide towards protectionism, which implies that it's not immediate, it's going over a period of time. His first was not irrelevant in size and scale, but time frame obviously is. If it's a million years later, we can take actions in the interim to solve that impact without it being immediate. His second was trade immediate as well, but it says global slide, which proved that. My practicing every single day, ask yourself the question, even if a trade war is really bad, when is it going to happen? Where's mine are happening every single day? His third response was, it outweighs in probability. That's a joke. Mine is happening as we speak. We're to see us win several internal links like poll cap. If it takes more than 30 seconds to resolve, you should vote out because the entire case was conceded in the 2-and-R now, the solvency. I'm also going to go for my protest that way the dissentics imposter, campus activism key to solve our social problems that occur, civil rights group, we can speak out against oppression, extend the uniqueness variant that takes the politics to sad, even trade wars are real bad. We can protest for action to solve our trade later on, for example, we can have campus rallies. His arguments here dismissed the vote. His first was, his first second said liberals don't care and won't solve. Trump disproves that. Their own scenario proves that protests do work. The reason why it's up for a vote in the status quo is because people care about the issue. So the impact is obvious scalar. Having more protests would be able to solve the impacts they criticize. Their third was doesn't matter to Trump voters, but the act applies to all people on campuses, conservatives or liberals. We'll still hear viewpoints. The tiebreaker issues, the case has been conceded, and I defense on the dissad. Go to politics. Except my first response, your own evidence goes out. Trade wars would thump for Trump. They say, even says they wouldn't get involved in risky conflicts. His 2 arguments there say it proves the point, and then it proves the uniqueness argument. But it means uniqueness overwhelms the link if they're so worried about trade wars. Nothing will overcome that. Paul Ryan's not going to be like, screw it, let's get ourselves blown up then because we want to have free speech in campuses. Obviously wouldn't do anything. And magnifies the impact. Also my fourth response with Robertson. Wisdom 2 months ago as opposed to 4 months ago. Foreign policy thumps. Issues like Russia are more important. His argument here was woefully inadequate. He just says that it's problem the status quo, but it postdates by 2 months shows that there is no reason the plan's overall relevant. But I'm also going to win why the case outweighs. He outweighs the Athens scope and scale, but it's my size link argument. The plan doesn't affect trade all that much. Only affects one single policy option, whereas I do solve for hate speech, which resolves it now. The hate speech dissad. You spent 30 seconds here, concede a lot of important arguments. Cessie's evidence is game over, extended hate speech not protected constitutionally. It is not considered part of free speech. Various cases like Blue Harvest have shown that it is not protected. Takes out the link on the dis ad. This argument's not very good, but it's conceded. It proves that hate speech is not protected by the app, so it doesn't apply. Either way, though, if the dis ad debate's muddled, the tiebreaker issue is that the case solvency has been conceded. We can protest against things like trade wars if you vote out. Good round. Good round.
Cool. So, Raffi, I'll just give you some big picture thoughts on this, and then Parker, you and I can talk after.
Sounds good. Oh, sure.
So one thing that comes to mind, Raffi, is that I think that your 2AR weighing on time frame is persuasive, and I think that saying things like, like if it takes you more than 30 seconds to resolve the politics debate, you should go AF and like ask yourself this question, even if a trade war is really bad, when will it happen? It's not like Paul Ryan's going to go and like get ourselves blown up. I think that in terms of the ethos, you are doing fantastic. I think that you definitely want to be paying attention to a lot of the line by line of the 2NR though. Like for instance, there's this argument that time frame weighing is not relevant and that scope and scale outweigh on a meta level. And the example given is about flies like biting you. And things like that, I think that you definitely want to put lip service to, right? Because the 2NR is sort of looking forward to your 2AR and realizing that time frame weighing is your best chance, and so it's putting up obstacles. So that was one argument that I think the 2AR definitely should be putting some lip service on. I think another argument the 2AR should be putting lip service on is this like pseudo probability claim that Parker is making. He says that there's so many other factors that can affect the alt-right, but only one thing can stop trade policies, which is trade policies. And so he's saying that even if the overall probability of the scenario isn't high, the internal probability of the link chain is, because it's a one causal link chain, whereas yours has multiple causes. So I think arguments like these, while not particularly fantastic, should definitely not be dropped by the 2AR, right?
It makes sense, yeah.
And so I would be, if I were you walking into this 2AR, my prep time would focus on, let me isolate all of the weighing arguments the 2NR made and put explicit lip service on all of them, because that way the weighing debate becomes very easy for you, for the judge in particular, to resolve in favor of the affirmative, because it becomes a lot harder, given that you have the ethos, right? Like, I'm intuitively persuaded by your claim, but given that you're sort of technically making these drops, I think that that makes it harder for me to sort of override the drops on the flow in favor of the ethos. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, completely. Like if it's close technically, then the ethos would help. But if I'm making substantial drops, then like that can't override like all of that.
Yeah, and I think on substance in the 2AR, you're sort of choosing an interesting route, because I see you having like multiple ways to win the solvency of the AF. I personally thought the one you were going to go for is the Malik turn on the disad itself, right? So like the argument about Great Britain or whatever. Because the 2NR just like straight up drops that, right? And I think that's like 100% solvency. And then on the weighing page, you can leverage his weighing for you, because his weighing is just about like how hate speech is really bad. And so you can say, look, like it's no longer a question of like long-term mindset changes. It's just like straight up like, would you want a little bit of hate speech now or a lot of hate speech later? It obviously is a duration question at this point, where you should definitely want a lot of hate speech later.
That makes sense. So instead of going so you think I should have kicked out of the alt-right stuff and the protest stuff and just gone for the hate speech versus politics wing?
Well, I'm not necessarily sure about that. I think that the con to kicking out of the protest stuff is and the alt-right stuff is you're sort of leveraging that as defense on the disad, right? On politics. And so in a world where you no longer you essentially have three independent 2ARs you can give here on solvency. You can give like the alt-right stuff, you can give the protest stuff, you can give like the hate speech turn, and you could give the reverse enforcement turn if you wanted. I agree with the 2AR decision. Seems like reverse enforcement is not worth your time given how many drops the 2NR is making on substance elsewhere. But I think the downside to going for the turn on the hate speech disad is you don't really get to leverage this like argument you're making about protests anymore.
Yeah.
And so you have to sort of weigh it out. But the plus side is it's 100% dropped, so you can also make strength of link weighing then, right?
Oh, so that makes the disad weighing the 2AR did, like, the size of link stuff more conclusive?
Yeah, I think it makes it a little bit easier for the judge to resolve it in your favor. I mean, the problem you're running into is that the disad evidence is 900 million people will die, right?
Yeah.
And so it's going to take, like, that's just an issue. Like, that's a huge impact. And so, yeah, I think that size of link wise, you're definitely, your best bet is this dropped Malik turn.
So, on a related note, should I have read Impact D in the 1AR?
Maybe. I think that Impact D makes a lot of sense against like extinction scenarios. Like I think that you're gonna have a hard time finding evidence that indicates like trade tariffs would not be like that would be like okay or like not that bad, right? Like the reason I think this disad is more reasonable than most is it doesn't claim extinction. It claims like a structural violence type claim. And it gives like an empirical example about China. The problem with putting more on the disad, I think the 1AR time allocation on the disad is not bad. I think you're getting out a lot of good arguments. I think the problem on the for the 1AR is if you put more on the disad, you get less out on case.
Yeah, so like fewer preclusive weighing arguments, which is like my best out.
Yeah, and so I think that I would keep the time allocations the same in a real round, and I would focus on the 2ARs where the big adjustment happens. Because I think this is like not. I think this is a very salvageable 2AR in the sense that if you come out far ahead on weighing, plus you win some defense on politics, small impact judges will vote for you. Right? Like, you also have to ask yourself who your judge is in the back of the room. Like, I am predisposed towards small scale structural violence claims. I think most extinction claims in debate, if not all of them, are just straight up silly. And so I think that, understanding who your judge is will also help you make that decision.
Oh, okay. That's fair. So like kind of adjusting like the framing based on who's like judging.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so those are my thoughts on the 2AR. I thought the 1AR was pretty good. I think the 1AR is dropping some weighing actually. That like you're inevitably going to drop some weighing, right? There's just like so many weighing arguments that the one end makes.
Yeah.
I think the weighing arguments I would not drop if I were you were the alt cause claims. And like
okay, yeah.
this takes out like there's an argument Parker makes about like taking out AF solvency that the 2NR doesn't really leverage. And I think that is the major weighing I would not drop if I were you.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah.
But in terms of like time spent on case versus the disads, was that fine? Just like I guess being more explicit on the weighing debate.
Yeah, I think that was fine. I mean, the issue you're running into with this whole res AF right now is that I would pick and choose which solvency claims you're trying to go for, right? So I would pick and choose like I think this 1AR might even be going for too much on case, and I would consolidate like right now you essentially have 4 independent 1ARs you could give on solvency. Would you agree?
Yeah, definitely.
And so I would ask myself, maybe give 2 of those and then spend the rest of it weighing those 2 vis-a-vis the other impacts that the 1NC introduces.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah.
Right now you're going for 3 instead of 2, and I think it works out for you fine in this debate, but I think you could be in trouble in other debates.
That's fair. Yeah, so just consolidating and weighing more. Because I guess like from my thinking going into the 1AR was I thought the 2NR was going to be given on the hate speech disad just because there was so much weighing done. So I assumed the politics is more of a time suck, which is why I went for a lot of like solvency takeouts on the case debate. But I guess knowing now that the 2NR was going to go for politics, I would have consolidated more.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to predict that, right, with flex debaters like Parker. I think that the best way you can sort of think about it is the way you did think about it, like think about time allocation. The original plan, I think Parker's stronger speech is definitely case solvency in the 2 and R, not politics, right? And so I think your time allocation is pretty decent in that regards. Like I think you're predicting, you're playing it ahead of time the way you should be playing it. And I think that like if somebody's reading a 2-minute politics dissad, you don't need to be spending more than 45 seconds to a minute on it in the 1 AR. Because then if you spend longer on politics, unless you're going hard for an impact turn strategy, which like tariffs good like might exist if you're trying to go like super hardcore conservative, but probably not the best like capital T true argument, right? But in a world where you're not generating a ton of offense on the politics scenario, I would definitely keep your time allocation similar to what you're at.
Okay, that's fair. Yeah. And I probably should cut some like specific, more specific turns like that are more recent probably because I know things are changing so quickly with like the political scenario.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think uniqueness takeouts would obviously be helpful. I think your thumping argument is pretty good. Um, but yeah, I mean, I don't think the 1 AR is the issue here. I think the 2 AR weighing is an issue.
Okay,
Like,
sure.
don't drop easy weighing arguments, right? Like, how am I supposed to vote for you when there's a dropped time frame weighing argument that like time frame on a meta level is not as important as scope and scale? You're making it harder for the judge to vote for you.
Mm-hmm. That's fair. Yeah. So I should explicitly answer that and or go for the Heron turn on the dissad and like use some of the 1 and C weighing to compare against politics, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Cool.
Sense.
If you guys want to like, I think if you guys would be down to get in 2-3 more debates, that would be really recommended, but totally up to you.
Oh, I'd love to. Yeah, for sure.
Great.
This is really helpful.
Great. Maybe we'll try to set up something for maybe Friday or right after the round robin. But
yeah.
Cool. Good luck at the round robin. And what I'll do is I'll post this as a private video on YouTube that nobody else can access, and then I'll give you an access URL to it, Raffi. So you can look at it, and then whenever you give me permission to make it public, I'll make it public.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for judging the round and for the feedback. It was really helpful.
No problem. Take care.
Thank you. Bye. See you, Parker. See you, Paris.
Bye.